Hello and welcome. Tonight, grid grief. Why our electricity network has Australia blacking out.
I feel like I'm in a third world country and we just got to be prepared.
The planning body that operates the market didn't allow for this extreme circumstance.
The reliability of our coal-fired power stations is uncertain.
Also, the price to stay alive. The dream drugs leaving cancer patients out of pocket.
It's so wonderful to be alive, but we're in a lot of debt. We've sold everything that we possibly can sell and we owe everyone we know.
And Jimmy Barnes' advice to his younger self.
There was times as a child I thought, the world was just too hard. I'd go out and make a lot of mistakes, and the more mistakes I made, the more I learned from it and the better person I became. I made a lot of mistakes, so I'm a great person now.
There's little relief in sight to this summer's heatwave conditions, and that means a lot is riding on the post-mortem into last week's blackouts in Victoria. A combination of record power demand and a failure of key generators saw electricity cut to 200,000 homes and businesses across the state. The deliberate and drastic action, called loadshedding, was taken to prevent a catastrophic collapse of the entire system. It's the latest chapter in the debate about the long-term reliability of the national electricity grid, with warnings that New South Wales could be at risk of similar power shortfalls in coming days. Angelique Dinellen reports.
At Entanglements Medlat, they're still catching up on orders. The business in Melbourne's southeast lost a half a day's work when its power was deliberately cut.
On Friday afternoon, we had all the air conditioning going, had quite a few welding projects on, and also we're working on a few designs on our computers, and just everything went down, including the phone line.
All up, more than 50 regions in Victoria endured forced blackouts last week to keep the lights on elsewhere.
I'm resigned to it happening. I feel like I'm in a third world country and we just got to be prepared.
It's very unfortunate when it happens, but it's the type of action that we need to take as a system operator in order to make sure that the system is maintained in a safe state.
With heatwave conditions driving high demand, wholesale prices soared and key coal generators failed.
One of them had 2 of its 4 units offline, one for maintenance, and the other had a technical failure in the plant. And the other one, at Loy Yang A, had also 2 units offline, again, mostly for technical problems. And that meant we were short well over 1,000 megawatts of capacity on Friday.
It's triggered yet another volley in the coal versus renewables debate.
While units were falling over in our coal-fired power stations, renewable energy was going strong last Friday. We're investing in renewable energy because we know that the reliability of our old, privatised coal-fired power stations is uncertain.
Suddenly, during that 1 hour that we ended up having to load shed, the wind dropped unexpectedly to 350 megawatts. And so had we not lost the wind during that hour, we would not have had to be in the load shed again.
Supply to the national electricity grid has tightened since South Australia's only coal-fired power station was shut down in 2016. A year later, Victoria's 1,600 megawatt coal-fired Hazelwood power station closed.
No, coal's not to blame for what happened on Friday. We don't quite have enough generation in the system at the moment, particularly in Victoria, and that's a reflection of a lack of investment in new generation.
On the day of the blackouts, Brown Coal generated about 42% of Victoria's needs. About 23% came from gas generation, 16% was from hydro, 9.5% from wind, and almost 4% from rooftop solar. Victoria was also taking as much power as it could from South Australia, New South Wales and Tasmania. Alcoa's aluminium smelter was temporarily shut down to save power.
Of the 350 some units we had in Australia, we only had 3 units out across the entirety of the NEM. So the reliability of the units has been up there all summer. We just had a very unfortunate confluence of events.
Last summer, the Australian energy market operator installed backup diesel generators in Victoria, but they weren't used, and they decided not to bring them back this year.
Customers are very concerned about the price of energy, and if we procure that level of reserves or we buy too much, the concern is then customers have to pay for them even if they're not used.
The day before Victoria's blackouts, diesel generators in Adelaide helped South Australia avoid similar power cuts amid record temperatures.
As the solar was falling away, the wind was falling away as well. Now, in that case, they did have backup available in diesel generators. They were called upon. They ran for a couple of hours, and that got them through that peak period of demand.
With demand so high across South Australia and Victoria, the wholesale price of electricity skyrocketed from a few $100 a megawatt hour to the maximum allowable price of $14,500. The sustained high prices triggered a rare move by AEMO to impose a cap. The costs will eventually filter through to customers.
Well, the industry absolutely understands that people want to see downward pressure on power prices. We certainly want the same thing. We know our customers in homes and businesses across the country are doing it tough.
It was South Australia's statewide blackout in 2016 that first put AEMO's management of the grid under scrutiny. But the Australian Energy Council says the real fault lies with Canberra and continued uncertainty around national climate and energy policy. The most recent attempt, the so-called National Energy Guarantee, was dumped last year along with Malcolm Turnbull, the Prime Minister who promoted it.
It has been abandoned by the federal government. I regret that.
The fact is that would-be investors in this market simply don't know what the forward policy is going to be in relation to emissions reduction, and so are reluctant to step in and build the kind of new generation plant that our system very, very dearly needs.
The NEG would have imposed obligations on energy retailers to provide reliable power while reducing emissions. Instead, the Morrison government's looking to help finance what it's calling firm or fair dinkum power, which could include new coal generation.
We would observe that coal does not appear to be the cheapest option out there at the moment, but more importantly, we're a little wary of government stepping in to underwrite new generation.
The Energy Minister, Angus Taylor, declined to be interviewed, but said there had been strong private sector interest in a registration process that closed last week.
It's not a question of coal or resource. The AEMO is technology agnostic. The type of resource we would want is a resource that can respond very quickly, that doesn't need to be on all the time, but can be on for a couple of hours.
Back at Helen Neelan's workshop, she's worried there could be more blackouts this summer. But it's not only a reliable supply she's after, she's also looking for cheaper power.
The electricity bills have more than doubled. We're trying to manufacture things here in Australia. We don't want to go offshore, and it's just crippling.
Angelique Denellen reporting. If you have a rare cancer,